Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases. Today's material is a SpeakDuo English language lesson plan centered on vocabulary extracted from a Sabrina Carpenter's Snack Wars video.
Yeah, and just a quick note, you can go to SpeakDuo.com to meet new people from around the world who are practicing English on video calls to, become more confident with their English speaking abilities.
Exactly. But let's jump right in. Because the current structural sequencing of presenting mechanical grammar and pronunciation corrections before the engaging core content really disrupts the learner's initial momentum.
Oh, completely. I mean, imagine sitting down in a movie theater. The lights dim, the screen expands, and you're just, primed for an experience.
Right. You're ready for the show.
Exactly. But right before the opening credits roll, the theater manager turns on the house lights and just starts giving you highly critical feedback on how poorly you're sitting in your chair.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would instantly deflate the anticipation. I mean, you'd be pulled right out of the moment.
You really would. And, well, that is exactly what is happening in the opening of this lesson plan. Right out of the gate, after a brief title slide, the learner is hit with personalized AI feedback.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like, at the 46-second mark, the lesson corrects a totally disorganized sentence about a 5-year plan.
Right, and then literally 2 seconds later, at 0048, there's a pronunciation slide that isolates the user's inability to correctly pronounce the word yeah.
It's just giving them mechanical instructions on mouth placement, right?
Yeah, it's incredibly specific, deficit-focused feedback before the lesson even really begins.
It kills the excitement before the user even reaches the Sabrina Carpenter pop culture content. It's like forcing a diner to eat a bowl of plain bran before handing them a menu to a Michelin star restaurant. It just drains the energy required for the rest of the experience.
That's clearly laid out. I wonder, though, if we've considered what happens to the learner's confidence and energy when they start with those corrections.
Well, I mean, let me challenge this for a second. We're dealing with advanced English learners here. Don't adult professionals actively want immediate course correction?
Sure they do.
So isn't delaying the harsh truth basically coddling them?
Well, no, it's not about coddling. It is about neurochemistry. It's something linguists call the affective filter.
Okay, right.
When a student, even a highly advanced adult, feels anxious or self-conscious, the brain's amygdala perceives a threat. It releases cortisol, and that affective filter goes right up.
Oh, I see. So it literally creates a cognitive block.
Exactly. It prevents new language input from being absorbed into long-term memory.
So by starting the session with, you can't pronounce yeah correctly, the lesson triggers a stress response that physically stops them from learning the fun vocabulary on the next slide.
Precisely. I mean, the intention behind the AI feedback is wonderful, but the placement is actively sabotaging the pedagogical goal.
Right. So what's the fix here?
The suggestion is to move all that personalized AI feedback and the grammar corrections to the very end of the lesson, as a sort of post-session wrap-up.
Okay, but how do we implement that practically without, losing the value of the feedback?
Well, they should start the slide deck directly with the Snack Wars video introduction. Just jump straight into expression 1, which is to be fascinated by something.
Oh, so skip the corrections entirely at the start.
Exactly. The pronunciation practice for the yeah sound and the grammar correction should be moved entirely to the past events review page mentioned at the very end of the document.
I like that, framing them as a helpful takeaway rather than a barrier to entry.
Right. You lower the affective filter first.
That makes total sense. But moving past the opening, we hit another major roadblock. The provided example sentences for the vocabulary expressions lack thematic consistency with the core premise, missing a critical opportunity for cohesive contextual learning.
Ah, yes. The practice examples. Let's dig into those.
Yeah, because the lesson is built around this really engaging premise, a celebrity eating and reacting to strange snacks. But the practice examples jump wildly out of context.
They really do.
I mean, to teach fascinated by, the learner is suddenly looking at an example about astronomy and black holes.
Right, and then for just when you think it's over, it's suddenly about catching a severe cold.
Exactly. And for holding one's nose, we are sitting through a 3-hour corporate meeting. It causes severe cognitive whiplash.
Whiplash is the perfect word for it.
You're yanked from Sabrina Carpenter to outer space, to a sickbed, to a boardroom. It makes the new vocabulary so much harder to anchor in memory.
Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of narrative immersion? Our brains rely on associative networks.
Right, cognitive schema.
Exactly. If you learn a cluster of new idioms within a single, cohesive schema like a specific narrative about food or trying weird things, recalling one word naturally activates the network and helps you recall the others.
So the suggestion here is to unify the example questions and practice sentences entirely around themes of food, celebrity culture, or just unexpected things.
Yes, just maintain the narrative immersion straight through the exercises.
To show how this should be done, let's actually demonstrate teaching these idioms for advanced English learners. We can compare them to similar alternatives and explore the nuances through examples you might use at work or even in an IELTS speaking part 2.
I love that approach. Let's take that first expression, to be fascinated by something.
Okay,
The nuance here is the depth of the captivation. It's not just being interested in something, which, implies a casual curiosity.
right. Being fascinated implies a magnetic, almost obsessive level of attention.
Exactly. So an IELTS speaking part 2 example, keeping with our food theme, might be, when I visited Japan, I was absolutely fascinated by the intricate preparation of pufferfish. I couldn't look away.
That's a great example. Now let's look at the second expression, just when you think it's over. The nuance here, if you compare it to a phrase like out of the blue, is that false sense of finality.
Oh, right, because out of the blue just means it's unexpected.
Exactly. But just when you think it's over requires you to firmly believe a situation has concluded before it starts up again.
Yeah. So if we pivot to a work example, you might tell a colleague, just when you think it's over, and you're packing up your laptop at 5 p.m., the boss drops a massive 30-page revision request on your desk.
Ah, I can feel that specific exhaustion.
Spot on. Okay, third expression, to hold one's nose. Now, the closest alternative here is to bite the bullet.
But the nuance is totally different, right?
Completely. Biting the bullet is about enduring pain or fear, but holding your nose is about tolerating something distinctly unpleasant or distasteful just to get a result. This perfectly mirrors the snack tasting theme of the video, too.
Oh, definitely. So in a corporate environment, you might say, I really dislike our new software vendor's aggressive communication style, but their prices are so low, we just have to hold our nose and sign the contract.
Perfect. And the fourth one is to reach a milestone. Now, a common alternative is achieving a goal.
Right. But a goal is often a final destination.
Exactly. A milestone implies a significant marker of progress on a much longer journey, like reaching a milestone in a YouTube channel subscriber count.
Or at work, you might tell your boss, securing this regional client is a huge milestone for our department, but we still need a national contract to hit our yearly targets.
Yeah. Teaching the vocabulary with that level of nuance and keeping the themes consistent makes retention skyrocket.
It really does. Which brings us to the live conversation segments. The breakout room integration is currently placed at arbitrary, sequential intervals that do not effectively group conceptually related vocabulary for conversation.
1 and 2, and then immediately breakout room 1.
Right, and then expressions 3 and 4 followed by breakout room 2. It's just numerical pacing.
It's entirely rigid. Breakout room 1 asks learners to discuss to be fascinated by something and just when you think it's over.
But those two phrases have entirely different emotional valences. The conversation is going to feel incredibly stilted because the learner is just checking two random words off a list.
Is there a risk that focusing solely on sequential pacing might overlook the natural flow of contrasting emotions in a real conversation?
I mean, absolutely.
So, the suggestion is to restructure the breakout room prompts to group the vocabulary by thematic use cases or emotional reactions. It allows students to naturally compare and contrast related phrases.
But wait, let me push back here. If we group them entirely by emotion, aren't we ripping the words out of the chronological order the student just watched them in the video?
Sure, technically.
Doesn't jumping around the timeline create a different kind of whiplash?
That's a fair question, but chronological order only really matters for the comprehension of a video. When it comes to the actual production of language in a conversation, native speakers group idioms by sentiment, not by when they heard them.
Oh, that makes sense. If you're angry, you pull from your cluster of negative idioms.
Exactly. Grouping them emotionally builds those practical conversational pathways.
Well, let's demonstrate that emotional grouping with the next 4 idioms on the list. Let's start with expression 5, to not be mad at something.
Okay, so the alternative here might be to be thrilled. But the nuance of not being mad at something is all about defying negative expectations.
Meaning you expected to dislike something, but you are pleasantly surprised.
Right. So an IELTS speaking example could be, I usually hate long corporate training seminars, but the speaker today was so hilarious, I honestly wasn't mad at it.
I love that. Next, let's look at expression 6, deserves to be fired.
You might compare this to saying someone deserves a reprimand. But in informal conversation, saying someone deserves to be fired for a bad product is pure hyperbole.
It's used to express severe incompetence, usually for comedic effect, right?
Exactly. If you were talking to a colleague about a terrible software update, you might say, whoever designed this incredibly confusing user interface deserves to be fired.
Which leads perfectly into expression 7, to be repulsed. The alternative is simply to dislike.
But the nuance of repulsion is that it is visceral and physical. You don't just dislike it, your body physically rejects it.
Oh, definitely. You might say, I was entirely repulsed by the way the marketing director spoke to the junior staff during that high-pressure meeting.
Great example. And finally, expression 8, to overreact. The alternative is getting upset.
But overreacting explicitly judges the scale of the emotion against the trigger, right? It means the response was way too intense for what actually happened.
Precisely. You might say to a colleague, I think the client completely overreacted to a simple one-word typo in our 50-page proposal.
So if you group repulsed, deserves to be fired, and overreact into a single breakout room, the learners now have a toolkit to tell a cohesive, emotionally escalating story about a terrible experience.
Exactly. It turns a mechanical speaking drill into a dynamic conversation.
That is a massive upgrade. But there's one final issue with the end of the lesson. The placement and framing of the bonus expressions feel disconnected from the main lesson flow, acting as an afterthought rather than a rewarding educational climax.
Yeah, let's trace the flow at the end of the document. After all the breakout rooms, there is this prominent promotional slide for a live workshop.
Right, which feels like the definitive end of the lesson.
It really does. But abruptly, right after that promo slide, we are hit with 2 bonus expressions, to be blown away and to go all in. There is absolutely no narrative transition.
It totally lacks impact. It's as if you've already paid the check, put your coat on to leave the restaurant, and the waiter suddenly runs up and drops a side salad on your table.
That makes sense, but could the evidence also support a different conclusion? Like using these bonus phrases to synthesize the entire lesson?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, in educational psychology, we rely heavily on the peak end rule. A learner's holistic judgment of an experience is largely based on how they felt at its peak and how they felt at the very end.
Right. Like, if you go on a vacation to Hawaii and the hotel is gorgeous, but on the last day you lose your passport, that stressful end colors your entire memory of the trip.
Exactly. And right now, this lesson ends on a disjointed vocabulary dump. We are missing a capstone.
So the suggestion is to integrate the bonus expressions into a final challenge round that summarizes the whole experience. Elevate them into a climax.
Yes. Frame going all in as Sabrina Carpenter's overall approach to the Snack Wars video.
And then challenge the students in the final breakout room to use both bonus phrases, blown away and go all in, to give their own comprehensive review of the video they just watched.
It's brilliant. You turn words that were previously just dangling at the end of a PDF into a capstone exercise that forces a total recall of the lesson.
It really creates a true sense of closure. Well, before we wrap up this critique, we want to run a quick, interactive quiz to cement the advanced vocabulary we've just reconstructed.
Yeah, and feel free to pause the critique here if you need a moment to think about the answer before we reveal it.
Okay, question 1. What does it mean to be fascinated by something? Option A, to be intensely curious and captivated by something so much that you cannot stop exploring it. Option B, to become deeply frustrated and overwhelmed by a complicated task that you cannot easily resolve. Option C, to be entirely indifferent and completely bored by a subject that others find incredibly interesting.
The answer is option A. To be fascinated by something means to be intensely curious and captivated, just like being fascinated by the intricate preparation of pufferfish during a trip to Japan.
All right, question 2. How is the phrase, just when you think it's over, best described? Option A, a scenario where everyone agrees that a terribly difficult and highly stressful project is finally completed. Option B, a situation that perfectly seems completely finished, but then totally unexpectedly continues or intensifies. Option C, a deeply confusing moment when you abruptly decide to quit a highly demanding job without giving a warning.
The answer is option B. Just when you think it's over describes a situation that seems finished but unexpectedly continues, like when you are packing up at 5 p.m. and the boss drops a massive revision request on your desk.
Question 3. If someone has to hold one's nose, what are they doing? Option A, to aggressively confront a profoundly irritating coworker during a remarkably tense corporate negotiation. Option B, to completely ignore surprisingly helpful advice given by a highly experienced professional mentor at work. Option C, to bravely endure or simply tolerate a deeply unpleasant or highly disgusting situation while completing it.
The answer is option C. To hold one's nose means to tolerate a deeply unpleasant situation, much like holding your nose to approve a vendor whose communication is terrible just because they have the best prices.
Question 4. What happens when you reach a milestone? Option A, to successfully achieve a highly significant goal or major marker of progress you have worked toward. Option B, to entirely miss an incredibly important deadline due to severely poor planning and lack of resources. Option C, to physically travel a remarkably long distance across the country to attend a massive corporate event.
The answer is option A. When you reach a milestone, you achieve a significant marker of progress, such as a department securing its first major regional client on the way to a larger yearly target.
Halfway there. Question 5. What does a person mean when they say they are not mad at something? Option A, to forcefully express extreme frustration regarding a surprisingly terrible and poorly managed situation. Option B, to be pleasantly surprised by a specific thing and discover that you actually find it better than expected. Option C, to carefully hide your genuine emotional reactions when facing an incredibly difficult professional crisis.
The answer is option B. Being not mad at something means you are pleasantly surprised, like expecting a corporate seminar to be dreadful but finding you actually enjoyed the hilarious speaker.
Question 6. In an informal context, what does it mean when someone deserves to be fired? Option A, to successfully earn an incredibly massive promotion after finishing a highly complicated global project. Option B, to aggressively request a completely new corporate assignment because the current one is remarkably boring. Option C, to make such an incredibly terrible professional decision that you should absolutely lose your current job.
The answer is option C. Saying someone deserves to be fired is a hyperbolic way to state they made a terrible decision, like whoever designed that incredibly confusing user interface.
Almost done. Question 7. Which of the following defines what it means to be repulsed? Option A, to feel a powerfully strong and incredibly visceral sense of disgust that makes it impossible to continue. Option B, to experience a surprisingly sudden and incredibly joyful emotion that completely changes your current mood. Option C, to maintain a remarkably calm and incredibly neutral expression during a highly stressful corporate meeting.
The answer is option A. To be repulsed is feeling a powerfully strong visceral disgust, exactly how you might feel if a director spoke terribly to junior staff during a meeting.
And finally, question 8. If an individual is known to overreact, what are they doing? Option A, to completely ignore a surprisingly dangerous situation because you severely misunderstand its true impact.
Option B, to loudly respond to a specific situation with far more intense emotion or drama than it actually warrants. Option C, to logically analyze a highly complicated issue before providing a remarkably thoughtful and calm response.
The answer is option B. To overreact is responding with far more intense emotion than warranted, like a client losing their mind over a single typo in a 50-page proposal.
Well, this has been a thorough look at how structural choices can make or break an advanced educational resource. To quickly recap our actionable takeaways, first, reorder the highly critical AI feedback to the end of the lesson to keep the learner's affective filter low.
Right. And second, unify the disparate practice examples entirely around the core theme to prevent cognitive whiplash.
Third, abandon sequential breakout rooms and instead group the vocabulary by emotional sentiment to foster natural conversation. And finally, turn those disjointed bonus expressions into a capstone challenge, leveraging the peak end rule.
Implementing these changes will really transform this from a good lesson into a truly immersive masterclass experience. The core material is fantastic. It just needs that structural polish.
We invite the creators at SpeakDuo to implement these structural changes, revise their lesson plan, and submit it back in for a future critique. We'd love to see how it evolves. Keep the house lights down, start the show, and save the critiques for when the audience is fully invested in the journey.